There is a school of thought out there that holds that we all have irrational beliefs. And, of course, that is undeniably true. However, I do not like what that leads to. Because the next position, what they move on from, is basically the position that because we all hold irrational beliefs, we must therefore accept and respect that other people might hold other irrational beliefs different from ours. The other point that I want to raise is that people putting forward this argument often also seem to have a blurred understanding of the difference between irrational on the one hand and illogical on the other hand. Now, let me address the illogical part first. Illogical arguments, illogical reasoning, is reasoning that is based on flawed logic. The logic that is applied to the premises is incorrect. As a result, the conclusions are incorrect, and therefore the argument can be dismissed. Hear this, because it's very, very important. If somebody comes into a debate claiming they have proof for the existence of God, and they propose one of the well-known logical fallacies, for example Pascal's wager, we do not need to debate that person. Those fallacies have been exposed, debunked and dismissed. And if anybody comes into a debate about whether God does or doesn't exist, we can dismiss that person out of hand. This is not a case of disrespect. It is in fact disrespectful for anybody to enter a debate like that, putting forward such well-known debunked arguments. What is left then is the argument about irrationality. And irrationality is a different beast altogether, because irrational beliefs are beliefs that are held despite the fact that there is no conclusive evidence to support the belief. And that is something that can be justifiable. Or not so much justifiable, but acceptable and respectable. For example, to just give you a very simple example, I believe that my daughter loves me. And that is an irrational belief because I couldn't put down a piece of paper and mathematically prove this. So at some point, this is something that I've decided, or this belief is something I've arrived at more because it resonates with an emotional need that I've got, rather than proof as such. Does that mean all irrational beliefs are equal? No, it doesn't do that. Because despite the fact that I cannot prove that my daughter loves me, I have sufficient evidence to allow me to state that I know my daughter loves me beyond any reasonable doubt. Even this afternoon, I went to crash to collect her, and she saw me, her eyes lit up, she came running towards me with her arms held wide, she grabbed me and gave me a huge big hug. Are those the actions of somebody who doesn't love you? Especially a 3-year-old who doesn't love you? Hardly. So given the two positions, like she loves me or she loves me not, the former is an informed decision that makes sense given the evidence available. It's not absolutely provable, but it's an understandable belief and it makes sense. The latter is the product of a delusional, paranoid mind. So, looking at beliefs in general, we are quite entitled, even obliged, I would say, to scrutinize beliefs, irrational beliefs. Not because we want to dismiss them as irrational, but because we want to see how tenable are those beliefs. So, look at, for example, the belief in God. There's two ways to believe in God. You can believe in a God with a particular name, say for example Yahweh or Allah. And sadly, that is not a tenable position. Because if you look honestly at the history of these ideas of gods named Yahweh or Allah or Vishnu or whatever, you see clearly that they're based on a long history of oral and later on literal evolution of a human idea based on an ancient human mythology. And as a result, these things are almost certainly the product of the human imagination. And therefore, somebody who says that they believe in Allah has to be taken with a large grain of salt. Somebody who simply states they believe in a creator, without going into specifics, that's a different matter altogether, because you're talking about something that's much vaguer and much less easy to define, and you're coming into an area of irrationality where either the argument that there most certainly is a God or the argument that there most certainly isn't a God are not very defendable as such. Now me personally, I would say arguments against the existence of a God outweigh the ones for the existence of a God, but not to the extent that I can be absolutely sure of either. What I am absolutely sure of is that Yahweh, for example, doesn't exist. So no, simply accepting that everybody has irrational beliefs is no justification for treating all those irrational beliefs equally. And we must be skeptical, we must scrutinize those beliefs, and we must reject those that are clearly ridiculous. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing dishonest about it, and there's nothing close-minded about it. It just is common sense.